Hello, my name is Raul. First of all, thank you, Casey, for offering this beautiful showroom and the food and the wine. For nonprofits, it's very hard to find venues, on a month-to-month basis. So thank you very much. Really appreciate it. So I'm really excited about tonight's forum because it's going to touch on two of my favorite sustainability subjects: electric vehicles and safe, slow, pedestrian-friendly streets. I've been a fan of electric vehicles for a long time, way before COVID. But on the street side, I didn't really understand the importance of open streets until COVID hit. When the restrictions came on, wow, all of a sudden the streets of New York were empty, and to me it was a shocker. But of course, back then I was more worried about surviving COVID than enjoying the open streets. And then the restrictions were lifted. And we went back to the old, congested, fume-filled, toxic, noisy, and dangerous streets. And that's when it really made a difference to me in terms of the importance of having slow, safe streets. So, but the reality is that there are 2 million vehicles registered in New York City. Most of them are gasoline-based. So for the city to meet its climate goals, they are working towards persuading, encouraging at least 400,000 of those owners to switch to EVs, to electric vehicles. To do that, though, they know they have to provide some sort of infrastructure. And so the plan is that they're going to either invest or partner up with private groups to install 40,000 level 2 chargers and about 6,000 direct current fast chargers in our streets. So we're talking about, and all of this by 2030, right? Just around the corner. So we're talking about 46,000 chargers that are going to happen here pretty soon. What does this mean to our streets? Is there a balance here between, obviously the city is committed towards that, and how do we balance the goals of the city versus the goal of the people who want open streets, back to perhaps the way it was, somewhat the way it was during the COVID pandemic. So, to discuss that issue and other related issues, we have 3 experts here who have so wonderfully volunteered to present. Christine Berthet, she's the co-chair of the Transportation Planning Committee for Community Board 4. That covers the 2 neighborhoods of Hell's Kitchen and Chelsea, just a couple of blocks west of here. Greg Francisi, who is a transportation planner and in charge of the charger rollout in the city of Hoboken, so a lot of experience there. And Jim Burke, who is the co-founder of the 34th Avenue Open Streets Coalition in Queens, the very successful Open Streets Coalition.
Thank you, everyone. Just to reintroduce myself, Greg Francis. I'm a transportation planner for the city of Hoboken, just across the river, about a 14-minute path ride away from here. I'm going to talk about our Vision Zero initiative, which started in 2019, and some of the things we've learned and how we've been implementing Vision Zero over in Hoboken. So everyone knows, most people know about Hoboken as a very close neighbor to New York. It's about a 1.2 square mile city, very dense by our standards, but around here it's probably not as dense by your standards. But our Vision Zero initiative was started by our mayor, Ravi Bala, in 2019 through an executive order. And since then, we have had a 42% decline in traffic-related injuries and 0 deaths since 2017. And so our overall goal is to eliminate all traffic-related deaths and injuries by 2030. So it hasn't happened overnight. It hasn't happened, since 2019. It's been a 13-year program where every time we've repaved a road in Hoboken, instead of just putting back what was there before, we've tried to implement complete streets and other safety initiatives. We have installed 150 curb extensions in the past 13 years. It's a mix between concrete curb extensions, landscaped curb extensions, and rain gardens. We have 80 painted curb extensions, which are very common around here as well. And then 40% of our street miles have bicycle lanes on them. It's a small city, but it's still important for us nonetheless to make sure that most Hoboken residents have access to safe infrastructure. We have 14 pedestrian crossing islands, and we have 10 raised crosswalks and raised intersections. So that's been a 13-year program that we've been rolling out. As I mentioned, we started Vision Zero in 2019. We created a task force, which includes, your typical task force members. We have a police department, a representative, transportation, fire department. We have our local bike and pedestrian advocates. We have the schools, our local housing authority, and then we also have a member of the Jersey City, our neighbor, task force as well. And then I'm on their task force, and we use that as an opportunity to exchange ideas and help each other achieve their respective Vision Zero goals. Our Vision Zero action plan was adopted by the City Council in 2021, and it's organized around the safe systems approach, which is a core part of Vision Zero. It's this idea that crashes will happen, but people shouldn't die or be severely injured from those crashes. So our safe systems approach focuses on safe streets, safe speed, safe and smaller vehicles, safe behaviors, and post-crash investigation and care. And I'll quickly just go through how we've been implementing each one of those parts of the safe systems approach. A major component of our Vision Zero initiative so far was our most comprehensive crash analysis. So a big part of Vision Zero is identifying the behavior that's causing deadly and severe injury crashes. And what we learned was that 76% of serious injury or death crashes involve pedestrians, and 67% of bicycle-involved crashes resulted in a serious injury or death. And we learned that they make up a much smaller portion of crashes, but they're overrepresented in our severe injury and death crashes. And we also learned that 88% of those crashes with bicycles and pedestrians are happening at intersections. So what we've been doing is looking at those types of crashes and those behaviors, and we found that one of the most impactful ways we can address the severity of crashes and reduce deaths is lowering our citywide speed limit to 20 miles an hour. That's been a priority of ours. We conducted a speed study, and we found that most people, because of the way our streets are designed, our streets are narrow, and they're short blocks, and there's a lot of pedestrian activity, are driving already below 25 miles an hour, which is our previous speed limit, and below 20 miles an hour. We also learned that, we also know through research that the chance of severe injury or death by a pedestrian in a crash reduces from 50% at 30 miles an hour to 25% at 20 miles an hour. And we also, our streets are very narrow. Like I said, our blocks are short. We also learned that stopping distance decreases at slower speeds. So, from when someone sees a pedestrian crossing the street to when they apply the brakes, that's a really critical moment that we're trying to get in front of. And again, 88% of those crashes are happening at crosswalks or intersections. And so we've also used, in our city fleet, we've been deploying part of our safe vehicles. We've been deploying whenever we purchase a new vehicle or upgrade a vehicle or buy a new vehicle. We've been buying smaller vehicles. We've been purchasing e-bikes for city staff to ride around. A lot of the trips, Hoboken's so small, can be done on bike. We've been purchasing, this is one of our parking utility vehicles that have backup cameras, pedestrian collision avoidance, blind spot detection, and other advanced safety features, because as a 60,000 person city, we have very limited impact on overall vehicle safety, but we can use a little bit of our purchasing power and make sure that our vehicles in the city are some of the safest in our fleet. We know, as you all know here, that parking in bike lanes is a major impediment to getting people out and riding in bikes. And what we've been doing is we passed an ordinance to double the fine for parking in a bike lane to $150. So that's an important part of, enforcing safe behavior, or using enforcement to encourage safe behavior in Hoboken. And then we've been working with, whenever there is a crash with a severe injury, we've been working with our police department and our city engineer and our transportation department to quickly, as quick as we can, get access to the crash report and help identify what we can do to prevent that from happening. Is this something that we could have prevented? Is this something that could happen at a similar location, and what can we do to prevent it from happening again? And we've been, like I said, when we started our Vision Zero initiative, it was the first time we ever did a comprehensive crash analysis, and our goal is to update our crash data, our review of our crash data annually, to help inform some of our priorities in our Vision Zero action plan. And a more visible thing that we've been doing, and we've been getting a lot of coverage for, is what's called daylighting. And as I mentioned, sight lines are very limited at intersections, and we know that a majority, 88% of our crashes involving pedestrians and bicyclists are happening at intersections. And in the state of New Jersey, there's a law that prevents people from parking within 25 feet of a crosswalk, and it's enforced in various different ways by various cities. In Hoboken, we've taken a pretty aggressive approach with the idea of protecting our most vulnerable users, again, enforcing that state law, and managing the demand for curbside uses such as bike corrals and other things. So this is just an example of some daylighting that we've done near a school. So we've installed a bike corral here, and you can see when you're approaching, there's no stop sign or anything. And if there was a car parked there, it would be really hard to see these children crossing the street. And again, it's right next to a school, so it provides bike parking for students and residents nearby. Again, there's no parking allowed within 25 feet of a crosswalk, and our challenge in Hoboken is that we can't be everywhere all at once through enforcement. So we have to actually put physical barriers at the intersections to prevent people from parking there. And in this image, you can kind of see, this is actually right outside of City Hall. You can, if I didn't point it out with the arrow, you probably wouldn't know that there's a pedestrian there getting ready to cross because of that van that's parked there. So, as I said before, we've put bike corrals. We have micromobility parking for for scooters. We have city bike docking stations, and then we also have green infrastructure as well at these 25-foot no parking areas. One of our challenges in Hoboken is that we have about 9,000 on-street parking spaces, but we issue 13,000 parking permits for on-street parking every year. So there's a strong demand. We're never going to be able to meet for on-street parking, and one of the ways we're trying to reduce some of that demand is by giving people other options. Providing things as basic as bike parking and bike share has helped us with that, and also improve safety. Again, this is just paint and enforcement. It's not very effective. It's our minimal level of daylighting that we do in Hoboken. More commonly, we install these plastic delineators in these 25-foot no parking areas, again, to prevent people from parking there. And we've been testing out various designs throughout the years to help cars make turns and also prevent people from parking close to the crosswalks. Again, bike corrals. We have about 15 bike corrals across Hoboken in these daylight zones. A lot of them are sponsored by local businesses, so it's also an opportunity for businesses to understand the value that a bike corral can provide to their customers. One parking space in front of their business serves just one customer, but a bike corral can serve up to 16 customers. We have a city bike program as well, part of the same program here. And where we can, we've been putting bike share stations in those daylighting areas to help improve visibility. And also, we don't have a lot of sidewalk space to put stations on the sidewalks. Again, we have painted curb extensions. Some of them are newer than others, and the design is very consistent throughout the city. It's a more cost-effective way to get the benefits of a curb extension, so reducing those crossing distances and improving visibility without, the $35,000 cost of a concrete curb extension. But when we can, we do install concrete curb extensions. They're more permanent, and you're not going to drive over them. And then about 85% of Hoboken is in a floodplain. So we have a whole system of stormwater management that we're trying to build out, and a huge component of that is going to be incorporating green infrastructure into the public right-of-way. So where we can, we put in these rain gardens and bioswales, and they beautify the street as well, in addition to providing a functional benefit. And our biggest motto has been, using short-term improvements throughout the city to get permanent changes. So this intersection is right across from a school. It's one of our most complicated intersections, and it really started out with cars parked directly next to the crosswalk. There was no daylighting at all, and then we eventually we added a painted curb extension. And then when we were able to come back and work with our county to repave this intersection, we added more permanent curb extensions, and we added this refuge island. And what this does is, in this high priority intersection, it helps people who need more time cross the street safely, and it also slows down turning vehicles, so people in the area that are crossing feel safer as well. One of our challenges has been tracking our progress, and so we're working on different ways to reach out to the community and update them on progress, because we know that the community will support us to if they can understand what we're doing and the impact that we're having on improving safety. So we just launched this dashboard online that you can get it from vchoboken.com, and you can see where the past 2 years we've installed all of our curb extensions. We've installed speed feedback signs as part of our 20-mile-per-hour speed limit reduction, and we're just starting to catalog all these things now as part of Vision Zero is a data-driven process, so it helps us to have a good record of what we've been working on. So that's it for my presentation. So, thank you.
So, tough act to follow. He's done so many beautiful things. So, we are all working on making our streets better, right? But at the same time, we need to have the vehicles, those 2 million vehicles, to migrate to electrical, so that we can reduce overall the amount of air quality and improve the air quality. I mean, in our district on Chelsea and Hell's Kitchen, we have the 3rd worst air quality in the city, which nobody would have guessed, right? Still, people are paying millions of dollars for apartment, but you can't breathe the air. It's very, very bad, because we have the Lincoln Tunnel and the bus terminal, and we have all these vehicles which are, slowly idling, etc. So this is really a very big deal for us. So we have started the city has started to install EV charging, and one of the programs they have, the only pilot they have right now, is level 2 chargers, which are those slow chargers which had been designed essentially to be in your garage or in a parking lot, where you take about 6 to 8 hours to charge, right? And then on the sidewalk, maximum 30% of utilization. I took that from you. So essentially on the sidewalk, if they are parked in the street and the charger is installed on the sidewalk, you are not going to use them at 100%, because if you were going to use them at 90%, as Gabe says, you would have queues behind, so you have to use them only 2-3 times a day, especially because they are charging 6-8 hours, right? So they require a Con Edison hookup for each of those, so that's pretty expensive. And DOT has a pilot of 147, which were all over the city, except in the central business district. So they are not below 60th Street. And they are planning a rollout of 10,000, which is a lot. So you start to be concerned about, okay, we don't have enough sidewalk space, but we want the chargers. So what do we do, right? These are the real tough discussions you have to have in your community. So to mention the competition of the curb, recently our community board, we sent a survey to all of our neighborhood and say what are the things that you value the most at the curb and the things you value the least, so that we could get a sense of where is the hierarchy. There is nothing perfect, there is no size that fits all, but at least we get a sense of where people are. And so what you see here is that, you have fire and emergency access, structurally you have sidewalk extension, we just talked about that, bike lanes, bus lanes, daylighting, and EV chargers. All those things are fixed in a sense, right? Once you build them, they are there to stay. And then you have the operational issues like fire, emergency, access to stores, bus stop, trash container, deliveries, open dining, bike share, bike parking, and vehicle parking. So these are all the things on the top of that which are existing in our environment. And you're going to have, because we don't have enough space on the curb, you're going to have to make choices. How do I help the environment amongst all these uses? And then when you are talking about municipal fleets, which we had a very, very exciting presentation from New York City Fleet, where they are moving very aggressively into converting the fleets to electrical. And this is a picture on 35th Street, and I've put a charger in front of it. This is the way they are parking the cars now. And if you all read Streets blog, you'll see that there is an interesting competition between police stations to see who is the worst. So there is, the final four, right? So this is, but this is concerning. This is what is really. So let's say we want the whole fleet of the police to convert, and then where are they going to charge? We need to find better solutions, because that's not going to fly here. It's already horrible, but it's not going to fly. So, and there are school buses, sanitation trucks, hospital, emergency vehicle, fire department, all of that is going to become electric and needs to charge somewhere. And so what we have here is like a major conflict between our aspiration and where are we putting all that stuff, okay?
Christine, quick question.
Yes.
Those chargers are not there now.
No, this is yeah, I took the one from the other picture and plugged it here to say this is the kind of sidewalk, means that you have about 4 to 3 feet for a pedestrian to go through.
And you have the lines across, the electric lines, so
yes.
It's not unobstructed.
Right. No, I mean, this is what it would look like. So I think it's important, what I'm trying to say here is that it's important to picture the future and to say it is not that simple. We're going to have to make some hard choices here between different things. So, and the fleet, the presentation from the fleet, if you go on the DOT, the fleet, they are really doing a tremendous job as far as moving toward electric. So as I mentioned to you, survey of residents in 2022, and what did we learn? Well, we learned that, what happened there? Oh, okay, the round went to the wrong place. The e-charging station are way down into the priorities for the curb. And the reason is because people assimilate that to parking, right? And they say, well, parking is not my preferred my preferred use of the curb. So whether it's on a residential street or a commercial arterial, the answer were consistent. And this was a sample of 950 people, so this was not like 2 people, right? And so you start thinking and you start saying, well, maybe the sidewalk is not the ideal, right? Maybe we need to do something different. And you start thinking about the EV charging fast, the hubs. So there are 2 hubs. I mean, the charging fast is a level 3 right now, and I'm not an expert in any way. They charge between 10 and 20 minutes, is that right? About 10 to 20 minutes. And they are kind of designed for highway, quick turnaround. So you see the station there. They look like a gas station. And I guess to say you could have 100% utilization on those because you could have people line up behind it. It's a hub, it's a parking lot, right? They are usually deployed in a hub, like a gas station. I mean, novel concept, right? And you would require essentially 1 Con-Ed hookup for the hub, right? You are going to, and so DOT has built 2 hubs in municipal parking, and there is one in Manhattan, which is the south of Manhattan. And then Revel, is that the way you say it? Revel. Revel has announced they have a hub in Brooklyn, but they have announced that they are installing hubs in each of the counties, and therefore one in the south of Manhattan coming up. So there is the beginning of a realization that what we need is really something like a gas station. And because the rest, so I'm just contrasting that for you. And the conclusion of that is, first of all, is there an emergency to have more charging? And some people are saying there are more. So I did something here, which is I calculated how many refill slot being 10 minutes, for a normal station or 20 minutes for another, and say how many refill slots you have existing today. For 158 gas cars, you have 87,000 refill slots. So we are below on that. But for EV charging, you have more refill slot than you have than EVs. So I know that there is a little bit there is money out there, there is money coming down the pipe, which says you have to use that money, you have to do everything, but we shouldn't be concerned that we are way behind on charging. We are not. We are okay. I'm not saying we don't want to stop, but we are okay on charging. So there is no burning platform issue. The other thing I wanted, I found this thing right after our meeting. In 1920, America had 15,000 gas stations, and half were curbside pump. So they started the same way we are doing. And by 1930, they had 100,000 gas stations and 0 curbside pump. So I think we are in a space right now where we are reinventing the wheel. They have gone through that. They have put it on the curb. The curb was not that convenient. It was conflicting with other things, and it went to the gas station. I mean, the gas station model. So I think we need to learn from that and say maybe we need to look at more hubs so that we have more capacity and more flexibility. And finally, if you think about all of our advocacy, which is generally about, use mass transit, right? So it's really important that we have MTA electrify their buses, that we have all the commuter buses to be electrified, which the Port Authority is going to do in their new terminal. And then I don't see anybody talking about electrifying bikes. And meanwhile, bikes are burning into buildings, right? So it's interesting that everybody is so excited about the cars, but where are we going to charge the bikes? They should be charged in the street because, maybe on the floating lane or whatever, or when we are doing daylighting, we should have a little charging station there. But that would be a good use because those transportation modes are more in line with what we are trying to achieve, which is quiet streets, slow streets, less pollution, etc. So I think the idea here is to really think about what are our priorities, what are the conflicts, what's the best solution to all of that, and then push our administration to address those things versus, like, I have to say, the owners of cars right now, which are parking at the curb, they want their charger right there. But do we? I mean, this is not necessarily the best way. And again, not a single solution for everybody, right? This is in Hoboken at one place, it could be perfect. You know, at City Hall, in front of City Hall, I'd love to see a bunch of chargers, right? So we have to look at the different areas and not make a unilateral and single decision. But we should really always keep in mind what are the options and what are the trade-offs. And when we get to something, say, okay, this is, let's get toward the thing that is the most effective and which has been proven in the past and which is going to put the priority on those modes that we are interested in. So that's it. That's all I have to say.
Thank you so much.
So my name is Jim Burke. He's going to set up a video, but just it's going to start right away, showing when the city first gave us an open street 2 blocks in front of our only park, and they used a lot of police vehicles and traffic cops around, like on all 4 corners. And what happened was, then they deemed it, though no one was using it, and it was an expensive failure. And so what we did was we demonstrated in that first scene, we put a sandwich board up on either side of the street and said for emergency vehicles only. And instead of having a heavy police presence, we just said, we just put a couple of orange jackets on, and we put that 2 sandwich boards out, and cars just went around, and the world didn't end. You know, and one of the things that we also did right away is we wanted to make sure that people use the street. I grew up in the Bronx, and anybody my age or older in New York City used the street. That's where you played ball, that's where you hung out. In the summer, that's where you cooled off in the hydrants. And what happened in the subsequent years, vehicles got a lot bigger and drivers got a lot more aggressive. So we knew that people weren't just going to magically feel comfortable to go in the street. So we basically started programming, and we wound up programming almost 7 days a week with a heavy focus on children and a heavy focus on adults and fitness. So we had Zumba, yoga. For the kids, we had races and obstacle courses. Family bike rides. A lot of people had bicycles locked up in their house or in their apartment, cobwebbed, was not a safe place to bike. So what we really wanted to do is invite the parents and their children, and we go on these simple bike rides. So when we actually fought for our open street, the other thing we did was 2 blocks was not going to cut it. So we have a 26 block, 1.3 mile open street. This is one of our favorite events. That was the circus. But what we basically do is we really wanted to make sure people felt comfortable. This is a fashion show. We tried anything that basically this comes from the ground up. So we asked the kids, what do you want to do? Oh, we want to play tennis, want to do we wanted a fashion show. We do English as a second language group because that was another thing. A couple from Venezuela said, you know, we take English, we've taken English for years, but we never can practice it except with other students. So we started on the street and we do English as a second language group, and there are people from Tibet, and we have, I don't know if you know Jackson Heights, we speak about 167 languages, and English is not anywhere near the top. So we practice that. And this is just simple walking to school. We have, this is the mayor came to visit us. He joined one of our hula hoop classes. We have hula hoop and jump rope. But basically we have, in the warmer months, something 7 days a week. In the colder months, we drop down to about 3. We do food distribution all year round, and we do the heavy physical activity all year round. But like yoga is not so good on a cold pavement. Races, by the way, didn't matter if there was snow. The kids absolutely could be. I remember walking, and it was like something like 20 degrees. I'm like, am I really going? And I get there, there was already 6 kids early waiting, couldn't wait to start. We have lots of other groups that have formed. This is a glee club. That kid is in high school, and he wanted to form a glee club. So we have a glee club. They meet on Saturdays now. And this is just, it's an all-day walking on this corridor. It starts at, our open street starts at 7 a.m. and it's through 8 p.m., 7 days a week, the entire year. There are only 1 or 2, this is a Happy New Year. The kids wanted to celebrate New Year's on the street, but so they do a family wanted to do Noon Year, so their kid could actually participate in a New Year celebration. This is just this past January. So at 12 p.m., we counted down to 12 p.m., and everybody came out and made noise. And basically what you're seeing is all of these things are decided and brought to the community. We'll help you with helping fill out some of the arduous paperwork to get a permit. We'll talk to the police if you need a sound permit. And we also invite you, if we already have the permit, we do broad permits so that if we have exercise and instruction, you can, arts and crafts, for example, you can come in and join us on a lot of our things. And there's like constant people coming up with, this is a birthday party thing, and they have different kinds of games. The other thing this is in front of 398, the actual school brings their kids out on a daily basis. We have about 7 schools, 4 directly on the corridor, and there are 7,000 kids that go back and forth to school in the mornings, starting around 7:30, and then in the evenings, they start piling out at 2 o'clock, but then there's after school that runs till 5:30, so it's pretty constant. This is the clothing and food distribution that we also do every single week. And that's another thing that we started during COVID, but there's always a need in just about every neighborhood in New York City. Pretty much everybody is a week or 2 away from, if they lose their job, that they're in a jam, right? You can't get benefits right away. And this provides a cushion for people who need it. And this, by the way, is a new treatment. Talk about bike lanes and curb cuts and daylighting. All of those things that you mentioned are actually instituted along our corridor. This is just, we do this once or twice a week in front of a couple of different schools. Just hula hoop, jump rope. All the things we had to do, by the way, are very low cost because we started this. It was just a bunch of community members, and we got no money from the city. There was initially, and we had to open and close the streets ourselves. So we had to get together about 150 different volunteers, and we had to close 26 blocks within 10 minutes every morning and every evening. So we would have 10, 20 people out each day to do that. We talked to the city and to many of the other open street people, and we actually got the city to step up and do a lot of that work themselves. So now they, through a contract, open and close our street, which is a big help. And that also makes it more equitable. That means people who are opening streets in other parts of the city can do so without having to come up with all those volunteers first. But those volunteers were key for us to get the neighborhood buy-in. Because if your neighbor, I'm your neighbor and I got up at 7 in the morning and I put that barricade there to make that street safe, we don't want you to push it aside so you can drive through. And because so many of us were involved, so many people took personal ownership of the space. And I think that was really the key. And also a lot of those community events that I said, we've had Ecuadorian festivals, Colombian festivals, we had the Holy Throwing of the Colors Spring Festival. just about every nationality has taken their celebration right out into the street. And the neighborhood changes depending on, it's the entire neighborhood. So all 26 blocks are the entirety of Jackson Heights. So there's always someone doing something and celebrating something. And because of that, and we also, what we did was when we first launched is we worked with a lot of local nonprofits, told them our plans, and asked them to please help us gather volunteers. So there were a lot of people invested in making this a success, and they still do. And I think that's the biggest reason we've had one of the most successful streets in New York City. This was, that was up to today. I was still putting this together, so this was our Zumba class up through this morning. But we absolutely love our open street, and our dream is to have a connected network throughout New York City where you could bike and walk with your family without ever having to worry about being hit by a car. And one of the ways we're doing that is every few blocks, particularly in front of our schools, the city has been really wonderful. DOT has come up and given us plazas. So it's broken the grid so that even if you really wanted to drive and you're kind of a jerk, there's only so far you can go, because then you come up to a place where it's do not enter and you can't. And so we're working with them so that eventually all the schools will be safe, because one of the most dangerous time for kids all around the country is at school right in the morning and right in the evening. Usually they get hit and sometimes killed by a parent of someone else's kid. So and that was the other thing when we talked to the people who, have to suffer an inconvenience. Some people who were not 100% on board with an open street. We said, can we at least make the schools safe? And most people agreed with that. So that's, we came at this and still come at this with safety as a key. I'm the chair of Queens Transportation Alternatives in Queens, volunteer chair. So I have many years of experience, and a lot of people on our team, Nuala, my co-founder, she came from pushing for slow streets around these schools and pushing for speed cameras. And we were always trying to get a lot of our streets in Jackson Heights to be safer. So we have a lot of parents on our team. We have people who are in wheelchairs on our team. So we have a really wonderful group of people that sort of encompass all the different nationalities, different kind of mobility impairments, different age groups. We have a 13-year-old who instituted our races. It was his idea. He's on the board. So all of those people help us make our street work. And that's it. Thank you.